Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Dangle, Bet, Celly, powered by FTN. Chris Meaney here with you, and pleased to be joined by Mr. Pete Jensen of the NHL Network. No Eric Young here today, but we got a great guest lined up for you today. Only 3 games on the ice, but we're going to go through all 3 of those games, talk a little fantasy hockey. We'll talk some buy lows, some sell highs, and really just kind of catch up with my old buddy Pete. You can give him a follow at NHL Jensen. At NHL Fantasy. He is the director and senior fantasy editor over at NHL.com. Check out NHL Fantasy on Ice, the podcast you guys just recorded yesterday. Pete, welcome into the show. And how did it go yesterday? Who were some of the hot waiver wire pickups that you talked about yesterday on the show?
Definitely talking Jarvis from the Carolina Hurricanes. Really impressive rookie goals in 3 straight games at the time. And, of course, playing with Aho and Svechnikov. So that was the rumblings there. And then, of course, some of these goalies, right? You're always looking for goalies. I feel like it's been slim pickings this year. But guys like Jake Ottinger, Stuart Skinner, certainly emerging in the past couple of days. So we covered that and more on the podcast for week 7 of the fantasy season. And great to be on with you. I love having you on our show. And great when you return the favor for sure, and always pleasure to join you.
Yeah, this should be fun, man. I want to kind of just pick your brain because, we haven't chatted since the season started. Like, you and I did a couple preview shows, jumped on your show, you jumped on Mean Streets, and we were talking about a couple, teams and expectations and players. But now we're to the point where, American Thanksgiving this week, and I feel like a lot of teams think like, oh man, if we're not in a playoff spot by now or close to it, are we going to get in? And that's kind of where I sometimes feel like teams make trades, managers make trades, but also same sort of deal for fantasy hockey. I always want to give a little bit of time. Like, sometimes I miss out on those hot waiver wire pickups. Like Troy Terry, man, I don't have a lot of Troy Terry. Like, this is not a pat on the back for me. It's just like I like where my fantasy hockey teams are. I'm confident with, my draft strategy, and I want to give patience to some of these players. But now we're into late November where it's like, man, if you're not going, you're not scoring any goals, like, we may have to cut bait with some players. So I want to pick your brain on certain thoughts, certain players. If you're just joining the show, welcome in. We appreciate you. Again, no Eric Young. We do this about 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And we're continuing to give away betting packages here at FTN. And this will be the final draw, probably until right around Christmas time. We'll do it again. But all we're asking is if you rate, review, subscribe to this show, help this show grow, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, you're watching here, you're hanging out on the Twitter machine, you're watching our FTN YouTube page, smash that like button. You have any questions here for Pete? We do have a couple that we'll get to towards the end of the show. But if you have any questions, leave them there. If we don't get them to the, by the time the show is over, I will head over to the YouTube page and I'll answer those questions as well before a puck drop. We will get to the 3 games on the ice and have some picks and some props for you as well. But rate, review, subscribe, send that over to meanstreetsftn@gmail.com. We'll put your name into a draw and we'll give away a betting package over at ftnbets.com/pricing, $49.99 per month. Not just NHL picks from everybody across every sport, tools, Discord chat. It's all there for you, but a chance to win a free package as well by just subscribing, rating, reviewing, sending that over to us, meanstreetsftn@gmail.com, or at Chris Meaney, or at the Eric Young. All right, Pete, before we get to some of the players, you mentioned goalies. I actually tweeted this out before he came on, just the top 10 fantasy hockey goalies. Like, listen to these names here. A couple of them are surprising, some not so much. Number 1, Jacob Markstrom, a heck of a start for him. Shutouts galore. Jack Campbell, Frederik Andersen, so 2 Leafs dudes there. A former Leaf, and Frederik Andersen, who's been amazing for Carolina, and also the Leafs are rolling right now, and Jack Campbell's been really, really strong. Tristan Jarry is number 4. Ilya Samsonov, Sergei Bobrovsky. How about this one? Jonathan Quick has been amazing so far this season, up near the top in 5-on-5 save percentage. And Igor Shesterkin, James Reimer, and John Gibson. I know it's fairly early. Andrei Vasilevsky's been strong. He's been solid, but he's 14th ranked. Darcy Kemper's starting to come around. The Avs are scoring a lot of goals. He's 26th. And Robin Lehner is number 31. What do you make of that list?
I think some of those guys that you didn't mention will start to gravitate towards the top, like the Vasilevskys and the Hellebucks and Lehner, and even Darcy Kemper when you think about buy low options. I know the Avs are playing pretty well, but I still don't think he has lived up to anything close to what we expected in his contract year. Semyon Varlamov is another one. You could probably get him. People are thinking about dropping him because the Islanders are kind of down in the dumps right now. Spencer Knight is another one that I was really high on that has not quite lived up to it because Bobrovsky has been so good. But Chris, right? Like all it will take is a drop of a hat at the wrong time, and they'll be turning to Spencer Knight on a daily basis for the deepest team in the league in the Panthers. So those are some guys that I expected to be there that I still have faith in because we're only, still less than 2 months into the season. So, but yeah, the California goalies have definitely caught my eye. I mean, we've seen this in years past from Gibson, right? He starts hot and then the wheels fall off. This season feels a little bit different. And then James Reimer, yeah, I mean, pretty amazing what he's doing for the Sharks with all the turmoil that they've gone through. He's been a breath of fresh air in the veteran stages of his career. And Jonathan Quick, I picked up Jonathan Quick to be like my fourth goalie in one league, and he's been my most reliable so far, which is crazy to see. But it's good to see some of these veteran, we thought they would be cast-offs. We didn't have them in our top 250 guys like Reimer and Quick. We had Gibson there, but it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, how could you have Reimer? Come on. I mean, nobody drafted Reimer. Calvin Peterson was a guy that I took in a lot of spots late with like my last pick, and I believe he's the goalie of the future, and they've been rotating back and forth, but man, Quick has been so good. So I got the 5-on-5 save percentage leaders right here. Jonathan Quick, a 960 save percentage at 5-on-5. I mean, that's fantastic. Markstrom's right behind him at 959, Bobrovsky at 954, and then Carter Hart, a bounce back season so far at 947. You got guys like Jonathan Bernier, Jack Campbell. Hellebuck is inside the top 10, and Reimer inside the top 10 at 939 as well. I mean, Quick has been playing pretty good hockey. And I have been telling people, like when they ask me, Pete, about the biggest buy low candidate in net, I think it is Spencer Knight. And you mentioned Varlamov. I think him as well. Maybe Sorokin. We can get to the Islanders in a little bit, but man, Spencer Knight had a nice bounce back performance just the other day. I know he went through a 2-game stretch where it was pretty rough for him. The Panthers, they went through something with the coaching change, and they had to go on the road for a couple games, and Knight struggled, and I think that's where people dropped him. And some people just ask me, like, who's the biggest buy low candidate? I think it's him, just because Florida's awesome, and you mentioned it could happen at any moment where Bobrovsky just struggles, maybe an injury happens, and then you have yourself a goalie on a team that's going to win 40-plus games. What do you make of the Islanders' start? That's got to be one of the most surprising storyline so far as we head into the end of November. But Pete, man, I want to give this team a pass. Anytime you start the season 6 weeks on the road, a 13-game road streak, you're going out left, you're going out right. I'm talking about the world, southeast, you're going all Canada. Canada's huge. You're going left, you're going all the way to the west coast and those teams, and you're going to the Ontario, Toronto, and Ottawa. And much like this team played absolutely everywhere for the first 6 weeks of the season. Now finally back home, and so far not so good in the new building. What do you make of this squad so far?
Yeah, they have some of those similar things that plagued them in recent years when they got deep down the line, right? So the power play struggles, they're near the bottom of the league. Just in general, I think they miss Jordan Eberle, who has been the Kraken's most consistent scorer. I think Matthew Barzal certainly misses him. Matthew Barzal, coming into the year, we were saying to fade him based on ADP, not because I didn't like the player, it's just the supporting cast around him. And that team is just not geared toward fantasy stats year after year under Barry Trotz. So couple that with the road trip to start the season. I know they took a couple of trips back to New York in between and they had some days off, but still that's got to wear on you. And then you couple that with a couple key guys being on the COVID list right now, like Bailey and Lee, etc. They can't find that top line right wing, like I said. And then now Ryan Pulock goes down. Varlamov missed the first, week or two of the season. And all of that put together equals this underachieving Islanders team. But I do think that they can still, at the very least, over the course of time, pass teams like Philly, Columbus, New Jersey, and Pittsburgh to ensure that they do get into the playoffs, where they're always one of the few teams to beat.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, they've been so close for the past couple of years. I mean, just the Lightning, right? I mean, 1 goal away last year from really getting to the Stanley Cup Finals, playing Tampa Bay in the third round. I agree with that. I think the Islanders, I was just kind of looking on the fly to see what their Stanley Cup odds were. I don't know, man. Like, I think that once they get in, you and I chatted before we got on here about how they are really built for the playoffs. And if their odds really haven't changed that much to win the cup, actually, in some spots they have 35-1, but most spots 25-1. DraftKings, BetMGM, PointsBet, FanDuel, all 24-1, 30-1 at William Hill, 35-1 Unibet. So, I mean, long shot, sure. I think that still Carolina's a pretty decent long shot at 15-1. Just looking through some of the standings. So the Hurricanes are rolling, Pete, 14-2-1 atop the Metro. Washington, the Rangers in there, Columbus, Pittsburgh kind of, weather the storm a little bit. Now they've won 3 straight. Sid Kid back in their lineup, missing a lot of bodies there, still without Evgeny Malkin. So we mentioned the Islanders there. No real surprises, in my opinion, in the Atlantic. I mean, Detroit's playing pretty good hockey, 8-9-3. The Bruins have only played 15 games. There's a lot of teams inside the Atlantic that have played 20. We're not surprised in this show that the Habs are struggling as much as they are. Eric and I were pretty hard on them heading into this season. Over in the West, Vegas has had to deal with just a ton of injuries. They're starting to get some healthy bodies back. Stone returned to the lineup last week. Pacioretty is close to returning to the lineup. Man, the Kraken, 5-12-1, only 11 points, 2-8 in their last 10 games. Would you buy low on Philip Grubauer? Like, the numbers overall for the Kraken squad, they don't give up a whole lot in terms of looking at high danger chances, quality of chances, shots against, shot attempts allowed at 5-5 per 60, according to Natural Stat Trick. I mean, one of the best defensive squads in the league, but yet you look overall, Grubauer's nowhere near the top 40 in terms of save percentage at 5-5 among goalies. And overall, as a team, they're giving up a lot of goals. What have you seen so far from the Kraken outside of Jordan Eberle, who has looked pretty good? This is how an expansion team should look like, right? I mean, I think we got spoiled with Vegas a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't know that there is a ton of buy low appeal. I feel like throughout the season so far, especially going into it, they're a little overvalued in fantasy and the betting market. So I do think that the Kraken are one of the worst teams in that division. You would expect over time a team like the Sharks and or the Ducks to come back down to earth. Maybe the Kraken get a little bit better, close that gap. Vancouver, whether or not they make a coaching change at some point, they have some buy low appeal if you're looking at them to maybe make the playoffs. But I like Vancouver a little bit more than Seattle, even though the metrics are not on, say, Vancouver's side defensively. I still think we're going to see better at some point from not only Demko, where it's not always his fault, but certainly Pettersson and Besser. It's pretty shocking how bad those guys have been fantasy-wise. So I would say the window is open to buy low on those 2 Canucks guys. It's tough with Seattle. I mean, I don't have a lot of confidence in Grubauer just because, like we kind of predicted, a lot of people, that he was going away from a safe team like he was always in with the Capitals or the Avalanche. And I think we've seen that, that reverting to somewhere he's never been in his career. So it's a difficult situation for him. That was an impressive signing, but when you really dug a little deeper, I think that Grubauer was kind of destined for some regression here. And therefore, I wouldn't buy low on Grubauer. I think a lot of those names I mentioned earlier would be ahead of him on my buy low list. But if you can get him for nothing, or if somebody drops him, certainly that division is up for grabs to some extent. I don't know if a playoff spot's going to be up for grabs. It seems like, right, the Flames are a lock, the Oilers are a lock, the Golden Knights are a lock. And then if there is another spot, I would maybe give it to the LA Kings. So I think Seattle's behind all those teams considerably in the pecking order.
I agree 100%. I've had this conversation with a few people as well. We do like the Kings more than the Ducks, but man, the Ducks have been super impressive. You're right. The Flames are locked. The Oilers are locked. Vegas is certainly a lock. They're getting some guys back. On the other side, in the Central, we got the Wild looking really good. I feel like they're a lock. The Blues. I really like this Jet squad too. Despite not getting any offense really from Blake Wheeler, who's yet to score, and Mark Scheifele. I think they have 2 goals combined so far to start the season, but Pierre-Luc Dubois and obviously Kyle Connor have been fantastic. I just think it's an improved defense. Hellebuck's numbers have been fine. I know he's not near the top in terms of fantasy hockey, numbers and in-season rankings right now, but he's been fine. And overall, this is a team that I think heading into last night where they lost, they had allowed the second fewest goals at 5-5 per 60. So really strong, and the offense is really strong as well. A couple surprises in here, though, like the Preds, Matt Duchene, right? It kind of feels like he's turned back the clock a little bit with Mikael Granlund. That's a nice little 1-2 punch. Dallas Stars, I feel like, man, they're just kind of stuck in, are they good? Are they a playoff team? Are they not a playoff team? They have all these older players that are just underachieving, like Radulov is not doing anything. I see his ownership at around 80%. Sagan and Ben, like, are they getting any offense from Sagan and Ben? There's just a lot of, I don't know. Dallas is just a strange team, man. I feel like they should be better than this, but they don't score a lot of goals. And then you just kind of alluded to the Ducks. Now, you did say that the Kings would maybe leapfrog them, but what do you guys talk about when you mention the Ducks on your podcast? Like Troy Terry every single night. Getzlaf has more points this season than he had all of last season. Man, they've been super impressive as well.
They have. I mean, when you look at those, talk about guys that were not ranked in our top 250, and I don't think you could blame us. That amazing top line this year where they're all around the top 50 overall based on performance. Troy Terry point streak just came to an end, but my goodness, he's the breakout player of the season by far and away so far, fantasy and reality. Great young player. And of course, Getzlaf, I mean, we all thought he was done. I mean, he hasn't been fantasy relevant in years. His contract came to an end last year. He kind of signed that 1-year deal this year. And you're just thinking, is he just riding out the rest of his career there? Are they keeping him there because of what he did in the past, not what he's doing for you right now on the score sheet? But man, that looks like one of the value signings of the offseason. But it was weird because it was him staying in-house. So, and then Adam Henrique as well has been great. So I think it's a great story. I think you can sell high on any of those 3 guys for the right price. If you start talking about, like you were saying, you could get a Pettersson or a Mark Scheifele for a Troy Terry. I'd probably do that. So based on their career track records, but yeah, I'm very impressed by Troy Terry. Took me by surprise because he's been playing in the NHL. It's not like he hasn't had an NHL role. He just had a lot of growing pains, but has burst onto the scene here and has been the biggest surprise in all of fantasy.
Yeah, he really has. He really has been. I'm with you. I think what he's doing is a little bit unsustainable. We've been having fun with some of his props. I mean, his shot props don't always hit, but he's around plus 140 at 2.5. He's been, man, during that crazy point streak that he had, he was about plus 195 for, I think, 3 games in a row, and then he dropped to plus 150 just for an assist. It's like he just seemed to be doing it. Like, yeah, he's scoring goals, but he just seemed to be getting assists here and there and getting it early in games to continue that point streak. I agree. I think he's a sell high candidate. I'm going to throw a few more names at you and just see if you think you would sell any of these guys. So I was taking a look at just, every Yahoo league is different. This is a league here with face-off wins, so centers are kind of overvalued here a little bit. But I was taking a look at just the Yahoo pre-rank and where they sit right now. So Ryan Getzlaf, I mean, top 10 currently right now. Of course, face-offs. He is a beast in the face-off circle. But outside the 240 ranking for Yahoo, Chris Kreider, a top 15 player. This includes leagues with hits too. So, I mean, Kreider can give you a little bit of that. Matt Duchene, I mentioned, a top 30 player. Pierre-Luc Dubois is a top 30 player. Nazem Kadri, what he's doing right now, 5 goals and 19 points over a current, I think it's a 9-game point streak. 1, 2, he got 4 points last night. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-game point streak. He's got 14 points over that span. He's absolutely cruising. Eric talks about this all the time. Contract year. These guys will show up, and that's what's happening with Nazem Kadri right now. Troy Terry, just kind of mentioned him. Joel Eriksson Ek and Drake Batherson are guys that I would hold on to. They were in the FTN draft kit. Out of those guys, apart from Getzlaf, like, what do you do with Kadri? You just ride this out with Nazem Kadri? Like, would you consider selling him? Just, he's scoring right now. He's a proven 30-goal scorer. I mean, why not hold?
I would trade him for the right price. I kind of look at him in a similar realm to Getzlaf, where once McKinnon comes back, right now they're playing Rantanen, some center. I mean, they're probably going to shift him back to wing unless they want to really spread out their lineup and do something against the grain. So I think the fact that, Kadri's not always on the first power play. So when McKinnon comes back, is he just going to be that standalone second line guy? And maybe some of the offensive emphasis will be taken away. I mean, he's doing a great job thriving here in McKinnon's absence. And the whole season, he's been really reliable regardless of lineup placement. But I think we've seen some big production swings for Nazem Kadri, not to mention all the other stuff he's dealt with come playoff time, with not being able to be in the lineup for their most crucial games for Colorado and Toronto through the years. But yeah, Kadri, I think, is good in like a bangers league and stuff like that, a face-offs league. I'd hold on to him there in those formats. But if it's points only, you could see a considerable dip over the course of the season just because of his career inconsistencies. So again, a lot of these sell high guys, like for the right price, if you could bring in a slumping player like that, even like a Varlamov, I might do that. I might sell high on Kadri for a guy at a different position like Varlamov, or, trying to think of a defenseman that could fit that mold. Like, I know one of my teams, I wouldn't make this move, but I know like John Klingberg is droppable in a lot of leagues. And, you should aim higher with a guy like Kadri or Getzlaf than Klingberg, but anybody deeper down the line, like these are some guys that you might want to hit on, because Dallas has a lot of talent. Like we were saying, it seems like they really struggle stringing together consecutive wins over the past 2 years. I don't know if it's like system related or a lot of these guys are banged up and stuff like that, but Dallas is way too deep to not be able to string together 3 or 4 straight wins at any point over the past 2 years. It's kind of baffling.
Yeah, it really is. I was just, as you mentioned, defensemen, I was just taking a look at some who have kind of struggled, I guess, to start the season. I mean, Tyson Bear only has 9 points, but without Nurse here, he should get a big boost. Evan Bouchard as well. A couple other defensemen that haven't lived up to, I guess, expectations. I mean, Jacob Trickren, he's a tough guy to own in a plus-minus league, but he's a guy at least will give you some shot volume, and if you're playing in leagues with hits and blocks, he can help you out there. Klingberg only has 3 points, but, he logs a lot of ice time. It's weird. He's getting dropped. His ownership is 64%. Jeff Petrie has 2 assists. Like, that's pretty surprising. I'm a big Petrie fan, man. I think he's playing through something. The Habs are not scoring a lot of goals, but he's not even really shooting the puck as much as he used to. I really do think that, I know he was a game time decision a couple weeks ago. I think he fractured his finger last year and kind of played through that. I think he's still bothered by something, but he's kind of a guy that you probably shouldn't buy low on. But if he was hanging around the waiver wire, and he probably is, I would potentially pick him up in deeper formats. So yeah, we always tell people, Pete, it's like a stock market, right? Guys go through highs and lows. NHL so streaky, these goal scorers. Like, you'd be silly not to say, hey guys, Kadri's available here if you want Kadri. Even if you don't think that you want to trade him, just make him available to your league mates. See what you could get for a guy who's the hottest player going really in the NHL, apart from the real true studs in the league. We have some people hanging out with us, Pete. We'll get to the games in a little bit. Evan joins us and says Connor, you got burned by a Connor shot prop 2 nights ago, and Boone Jenner. Yes, Boone Jenner, back-to-back games has crushed us, but he's been really good. He's been reliable, getting a lot of ice time, shooting the puck quite a bit. Brett joins us and has a fantasy football question. Brett, maybe we can get to that a little bit later on. This is a hockey show, dude, but we appreciate you hanging out. He says he traded Michael Pittman Jr. for Keenan Allen. Win or a loss? Kind of a loss, I think, there. I think I'd rather Keenan. Cambo's hanging out with us as well. And we have some guys that are hanging out. If you have any questions here, guys, for Pete, by all means, ask them. How bad are those New Jersey Devils jerseys? Have you seen them at all? I think I saw a quick pic on Twitter last night, Pete, of the jerseys. People are saying that they're not great. They're not great looking. Did you have a chance to see them at all?
Yeah, I saw them this morning. They're different for sure. It's I like the black theme. I think it's right when you have a third jersey, you go with something different. those jerseys they have are classic. I know sometimes when they did reverse retro, they went to the Christmas colors. So it's I think it's something. I think it's something a little different, but I think we get used to all these jerseys, and a lot of teams out there go black. I think I've always been a fan of black jerseys with the Mets black jerseys in baseball over the years. I know some of the Islanders black jerseys have been like a little up and down, but one of my favorite black jerseys is like those Sharks stealth jerseys.
Oh, yeah. Like that.
I've always been a fan of black jerseys, hockey and other sports. So
you're speaking of producer Tino now. He's a big Mets guy. You're speaking to him.
It is funny though to see a jersey with the word Jersey on the front. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna get you out of here in about 10 minutes or so. But I wanted to continue with just some potential buy low candidates. I think Scheifele or Pettersson may be the two key guys, right? Again, taking a look at just the Yahoo ranks and see where they're lined up and where, outperforming ADPs and not living up to ADPs would be these guys. I mean, Brady Tkachuk, his Ottawa just got back in action last night. So Tkachuk, I mean, if you could get Tkachuk, and I've some people have reached out and said, should I try to acquire Tkachuk's available in my league? Absolutely. I still think he's a great player, especially in bangers leagues. Pacioretty hasn't lived up to the expectations, but he was just fine before that injury. So kind of maybe cross those guys off. Like, it's a little unfair to say that they haven't performed up to expectations. But Mark Scheifele, right outside the top 400 here. Elias Pettersson, top 40 player on average getting drafted. He's outside the top 120. Barzal, you kind of mentioned already about maybe a fade. Brock Besser, Radulov, Sam Reinhart, Taylor Hall. Is Scheifele the biggest name here on the board? I mean, he's got 2 goals. He's has 7 points. Blake Wheeler has 5 assists. I'm not totally into him because he doesn't shoot the puck all that much. But this is a duo that, man, Pete, they're really not getting it done right now. But you look at Mark Scheifele shooting 8%, 16% for his career. He's been the past few years 16%, 17, 19, 18, 20, 15. He's only had one season under 10%. That came in 2014-15 where he had 15 goals. It was his second year in the league.
Yeah, I think this is the time to buy low on goalies. If you're looking at the skater positions, I mean, I think Scheifele is the biggest name in Pettersson. But yeah, on defense, I think you can still, like when you look at the Yahoo ranks and preseason ranks and you see guys like, and I know you're still going to have to give up a lot for, Quinn Hughes and Pietrangelo, and I'm steering away from like a Tyson Barrie just because I think even without Nurse, they got so many other options there. Like Evan Bouchard is the up and coming guy, and we talk about Barrie all the time as having a high ceiling but also a very low floor. And we've now seen the low floor 2 of the past 3 years with 2 different teams. So I'm not really looking to buy into Tyson Barrie at this time, but yeah. And I'm also fading Chychrun just because I really don't trust that team much at all. The only guys on the Coyotes that I would even touch right now are Gostisbehere. I have him in your league, Chris, which doesn't count plus minus, so I'm comfortable doing that. And also Lawson Krause, the forward, actually has really good category coverage. I think he's got 40 plus shots and 40 plus hits this year. So keep an eye on him for some, diamond in the rough type appeal. Klingberg is a buy low defenseman. Yeah, I mean, it's tough with some of these injured guys. One strategy this year that I've tapped into more than ever is try to trade for these guys that are injured. And then when they come back, reap the rewards. I know it's kind of a pipe dream for Jack Eichel, but go out there right now and try to trade for Jack Hughes before he comes back from injury. Try to trade for Pacioretty. Try to trade, for some of these other guys like Drew Doughty. I mean, those are guys that I would want on my team once they come back. And I feel like whether it's team related or performance related before the injuries, you could get those guys for a decent price right now. So there have been a ton of injuries so far. Definitely, when you look at our top 200 rankings, definitely scroll down to the bottom where you see the list of injured players and on NHL.com/fantasy. And we've kind of made that into, it's not just an injury list. It's kind of the order in which I would stash those guys for the rest of the season, depending on their injury timetables.
It's a good call. I mean, especially if you're comfortable with your fantasy hockey ability, right? Like you could make that kind of move, and if you feel like you're going to make the playoffs, I mean, to have one of those injured guys, right? A top player, it's an added boost to your squad down the stretch. I agree. I love that. I love that strategy. There's a lot of risk in it, but it could certainly pay off. Pete, I wanted to continue just quickly and I wanted to share with you the top 10 drop players in fantasy hockey as of today in Yahoo leagues, because it's pretty surprising. Like Seth Jarvis is number 3, yet he's been picked up. He's one of the most added, but yet he's one of the most dropped players, which is pretty strange. He's on a 4-game point streak. He's really trending up. He's playing like some heavy minutes there. He looks really good. A couple other guys that are on this drop list, like Blake Wheeler, he's number 5 on this list. Evgeny Dadonov is on this list. He's been okay, right? I mean, much better lately. We've been kind of hammering his shot props. Didn't get it last night, but with Pacioretty coming back soon, he's going to lose that top spot. Pavel Buchnevich, I was surprised to see. I mean, he only has 4 goals and 6 assists, but the Blues, they're a weird team too, right? You feel like they should give a little bit more on offense. Sometimes they can break out. Other times they just don't break out. They have 5 losses in their last 7 games. And then Martin Naches is on this list as well. But he's starting to come around a little bit over the past few games. He's hit the score sheet in 6 of his past 8 games. I feel like he should be picked up more than dropped. And then over to the top added players, you have Anthony Cirelli, and we'll transition to the Bolts here with a game tonight and injuries with Braden Point now. I think Cirelli, I don't know what it is. People just don't seem to respect him. Maybe he's a better real-life player than a fantasy player, but man, he's going to get a lot of opportunity here with Point sideline and Kucherov sideline. He played 24 minutes the other night, 25 against Philly on November 18th. He's played 22-plus minutes in 5 of his past 7 games, and one of those games he left with an injury. Other guys added here, Derek Brassard. Phillies juggled their lines a little bit. Last I saw, he was on that second line with Claude Giroux. And Kadri's number 3, Jamie Benn 4, Noah Hannafin, Andrew Mangiapane. How about that guy? I mean, maybe he's a sell-high candidate. He's got 15 goals already on the season. Evan Bouchard, Alex Goligoski, and then Mikhail Brantley. Got Rupe Hintz on there as well. Goligoski is a guy, I guess he could, I don't know how long the injury is for Spurgeon, but he's got 11 assists on the season. I know there's been years where I've rostered him for just like some shot blocks. He gets a little bit of power play time. He's had points in 3 straight games, 6 points over that span. Cirelli, though, a must-add, a must-own guy. I don't know how you feel about him. And it sounds like the Braden Point injury could, I think he could be sidelined for a little bit.
Right. It seems like, with Braden Point and Kucherov out, they're rolling with Stamkos on the top line with Palat and Barre Boulet, who they reacquired after waiving him and losing him. And then I know we were talking about him in the preseason. He's got sneaky DFS appeal and maybe deep season-long appeal, depending on your format. But Cirelli still on his own line there, but he's a beast, like you were saying. He's shouldering a heavy workload. Sometimes it translates to the score sheet, sometimes it doesn't. But I think we've reached a point where Alex Killorn and Cirelli playing together is more valuable than Andre Palat. Palat's in a contract year, seems to be not phased out, but both of his line mates are injured, right? He usually plays with the big dogs, Kucherov and Point. So I think his value lessens a little bit here, and Killorn, Cirelli, I view in a higher regard now. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, not sure what's going on with the Seth Jarvis thing being dropped so much. I mean, it's one game. He didn't have a goal, but he had an assist. So, I mean, he's a
People
young stud.
They overreact.
Yeah, he's got a pedigree as a prospect. I mean, don't be dropping him. I picked him up in one league. I'm considering him in another, dual eligible in Yahoo Fantasy League. So, keep an eye on him for sure. And if you have him, make room for him. Don't drop him. So, I think we always see the overreactions this time of year.
We do,
hockey, but
no,
Seth Jarvis is a stud. Often. Don't do that.
He's doing a lot better than Jesperi Kotkaniemi is. I mean, Kotkaniemi showed up here and there, but it's, we thought potentially, and they would give him an opportunity, man, to be on that top line, right? But he just kind of didn't fit in well. But Seth Jarvis has looked really, really good. All right, guys, we get a little bit of a conversation here going. I love it. Keep it going. Guys are talking about Scott Stevens on the cover of his first NHL video game, NHL Hits in 2002. This is really a great conversation going back and between the jerseys, right? Like Christmas sweater, ugly jerseys and black jerseys and these jerseys. I love it, guys. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us here. So let's transition to the 3 games on the ice, and the Bolts, one of those teams here this evening. So we got Philly checking in at plus 152 over at FanDuel. We have the Lightning heavy home favorites here at minus 167. I think maybe an opportunity to jump on the Flyers here today as road dogs. The Flyers seem to start strong. I mean, Couture and Giroux were great, and Cam Atkinson was rolling for a little bit, and then it seems like the offense is kind of dried up. But we did mention Carter Hart earlier. He's had a nice bounce-back season. What do you make of this game from a DFS standpoint, from an offensive standpoint? I know we just talked about the Bolts a little bit. What do you think of this matchup here tonight?
Yeah, with that said about Hart having a great bounce back season, I still don't trust the Flyers without Ryan Ellis and Kevin Hayes, 2 of their better two-way players, or they came back and then they got injured again. So it's unfortunate. Flyers have been like wildly up and down. Like they win 1, lose 1, win 2, lose 1. It's been going. You look at their schedule. It's been like that all season for them. So yeah, I don't like them too much unless you're talking against the grain, like roster or Brassard. He's playing with good line mates. He's been a pleasant surprise. Rolling out Carter Hart on the road against Tampa, even without Point and Kucherov, that just scares me at the surface. So yeah, I would fade Carter Hart in DFS unless you're really looking if he fits your price point and he's, going to be really low roster percentage. So I'm still big on Barré-Boulet for this. He scored the other day. He's got 5 points in 10 games, and he has not been playing in a top line role for very many games. So, give him a chance playing with Steven Stamkos. Stamkos has been their leading scorer this year. It's like Stamkos and then Killorn. So not the names you're accustomed to seeing leading that group, but they're doing a fine job in their own right, Stamkos and Killorn. They were playing together earlier. Now they're on separate lines to spread it out and, patch things up until these guys get back down the road.
Yeah, my sleeper. He was sleeping all right, Barré-Boulet. They, as you mentioned earlier, put him on waivers, and he was claimed, and then he was put on waiver, and then he got back to Tampa, and they sent him down, I think, to Syracuse a few days ago. And then he's back up, and he scored a goal the other night. Yeah, he does have some upside, right? Some fantasy hockey upside, but just like some scoring upside as well. We saw a little bit of it last season, but yeah, they're shorthanded here. I don't know if we will see much offense here, guys. I do like Anthony Cirelli's shot prop. It's been at 1.5 for quite some time now. It's juiced here to the over minus 155 at 1.5, but he's had at least 2 shots in 8 straight games. We just talked about all the ice time he's getting. So with only 3 games on the ice here tonight, maybe you put him in there. Yeah, I see Evan checking out here as well. Cirelli shot prop at 1.5 minus 140 for him. Yeah. We're on the same page, Evan. He's a guy that I've been going back to, and you include him into a parlay, it can make it worth your while. A lot of people are asking why the Oilers are not favored in this game here today. You got the Dallas Stars at minus 112 and then the Edmonton Oilers at plus 105. That's a little strange. I put it in last night in our bet tracker at like maybe minus 104. I'm like, I'll jump on this because, I'll probably get to minus 115, minus 120. But man, for whatever reason, the Oilers are not favored here today with the Dallas Stars. Man, Edmonton's rolling. Like, what can you say about McDavid and Draisaitl? McDavid has actually taken his game to another level. It is crazy, man. And Hyman looks awesome with the Oilers.
Hyman looks like a perfect fit. They have 2 different options in terms of their top 6 forward group. Like they can switch Draisaitl back at any time to center on the second line. Nugent Hopkins, right up there among the league leaders in assists and power play points for the entire season. So he's having a great year, even though his goals have not been falling so far. I think that, it's amazing, right? Like, as good as McDavid has been, Draisaitl has more points. So
Yeah.
that says it all about them, whether they're playing together or separately. I really think, like, even if you took Draisaitl and put him on another team that maybe wasn't as good, I still feel like he would be like a top 10 or 15 player in the NHL. I do think he's that good. The fact that he could score more points than McDavid, he's done it before. He did it like 3-4 years ago when he won the scoring title. So that guy is incredible too. Certainly the two best scorers in the league, bar none. And then, as far as Dallas, I would definitely key into whether you're playing DFS or season long or betting market. Like, just keep an eye on the goaltender. Ottinger's playing really well. Khudobin is not. Khudobin gave up 7 goals in his last game. That could happen again against Edmonton if he gets the call. So, some weird things going on with Rick Bowness and some of the lineup decisions and the goalie decisions. And, you wonder, like, is he wearing out his welcome? That team has been really inconsistent. I know injuries have played a part the past 2 seasons, and last year was a shortened season, but something strange in Dallas considering all the depth that they have. Their leading scorer this year is Miro Heiskanen, a defenseman. The forward group is just all over the place, but it is good to see for anything you're doing out there to see Hintz and Robertson get going. I mean, that was the strength of the team last year. And the Dallas Stars didn't get much from those 2 guys earlier in the year because Robertson was injured. But now those guys are coming on strong. So in terms of riding the hot hand in any format, Robertson and Hintz and Ottinger are near the top of my list.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that. I mean, again, I mentioned Radulov earlier. Like, his ownership is just too high, guys. Like, he's just not. He's. I'd rather Seth Jarvis or other guys that we've talked about here than a Radulov. We are starting to see Hintz and Robertson, Ben and Pavelski start to hit the score sheet just a little bit. Dallas has won 3 of their past 4 games, but I'm on the Oilers here. I mean, I don't take the Oilers. I don't understand. Is this a trap? I don't get it. I've been really impressed with Edmonton. I don't know how much offense we'll see here. I mean, Stuart Skinner's been pretty solid for the past couple games for Edmonton as well. This is the first of a back-to-back, so they'll play again tomorrow night. Maybe he gets the start this evening. The Oilers have a game tomorrow in Arizona. They will not be underdogs in that game. But I for me, I've been talking a lot about Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins as values in DFS, and still prices haven't really adjusted for those 2 guys. Maybe Evan Bouchard. The Oilers are the way to go here. I think from a shot prop standpoint, Nurse is a guy that I've been on really all year. Is just like an automatic dude. The ice time is there. Loves to shoot the puck at 2.5. I will go to Hyman. We'll see if Hyman's available here right now. We got Hyman at -110, not bad. 2.5, -115 over at DK for 2.5 shots. That would be the guy that I would go to on the Edmonton Oilers. And then the final game here to talk about, Pete, this evening is the Chicago Blackhawks and the Calgary Flames. I'm a sucker. I'll admit it. I'll take the L. I thought that Blackhawks they'd compete, man. I thought that they could compete and make the playoffs. Like, when I was doing the playoff predictions, like, who's that final team that gets in the West? And I was like, LA or Chicago, LA or Chicago. I wish I went with LA, but Patrick Kane and the Hawks have turned it around a little bit since the coaching change. They've won 5 of their past 6 games. One of the losses came against Edmonton. Their last game was a 1-0 win, and Fleury looked good in that game. Pete, you know this. I mean, Fleury leaves Vegas, leaves a team that just didn't give up anything, and then he goes to a complete opposite team in Chicago. I think he saw more rubber, more high-danger chances in the first game as a member of Chicago than he did all of last season in maybe a 6-week span playing with the Golden Knights. But Calgary, man, they look really good as well. Are you buying what the Flames are selling? We'll get your mic there.
Oh, sorry about
there
that.
We go.
So I think really consistent team the Flames are this year. To go out there on that road trip and do what they just did is really impressive. It speaks to the Sutter system. I think the fact that he's allowing them to score at this clip really bodes well for their chances of getting to the playoffs. I mean, it was less than a year ago that team was right in the same boat as Montreal in the regular season, just a maddening, inconsistent, mediocre team. But I think they're playing to their strengths here. They're giving guys like Shillington a bigger role. They're giving Mangiapane a top 6 role that he certainly deserves. He's scoring goals like better than anybody other than Draisaitl this year. So it's pretty crazy what Mangiapane has done. Would sell high in most cases, but hard to let a player off your roster like that that's dropping a goal or two per game right now. So, and Elias Lindholm is, he's not going to get any MVP consideration, but when I look at that Flames team and their most valuable player, I think it's Lindholm even more so than Johnny Gaudreau or Matthew Tkachuk or any of these other standouts. Jacob Markstrom, 5 shutouts. He's been incredible. They have a lot of fantasy studs so far, but I think that Elias Lindholm moving from wing to center last year, that's one team that you could just kind of cross off what happened last year in the COVID shortened season. New leaf, full training camp for Sutter, and it's been amazing dividends so far. So yeah, I like them to keep this going back home and facing a flawed Blackhawks team. I mean, they're playing better lately, but the Blackhawks better be on their toes here, or they could get embarrassed like some of these other teams have lately. Some good teams have gotten embarrassed by the Flames, whether it was the Bruins, the Sabres got embarrassed by them. The Rangers have gotten embarrassed by them. The Islanders, I know, it was a couple of empty net goals, but the Islanders were never in control of that game against Calgary. So I've been really impressed by the consistency of the Flames so far.
Yeah, we have too. Eric's talked a lot about Sutter, and yeah, I mean, just kind of getting thrown in there and implementing his system. There wasn't a lot of time, and this year, just that fresh start. I mean, they really have looked awesome. Cambo says he's sitting on a 50-1 Daryl Sutter Coach of the Year bet. That is phenomenal. That looks pretty good. That really could happen, yeah. There's 2 guys I like. Patrick Kane at 3.5 shots, plus money in some spots for that. And then Johnny Gaudreau, man. Like, this guy's shooting. I would never really consider him before in the past for, a shot prop. He's one of those guys that has been part. Elias Lindholm he's been phenomenal. Every time I pick that guy for a shot prop, he doesn't shoot. And other times I don't pick him, it's like 7 or 8 shots. But look at the shots from Johnny Gaudreau this year. I mean, he's playing with a ton of confidence, 8 goals and 14 assists. His last couple games, 4 shots, 4, 5, 10, 3, 0 against Toronto. But before that, he had 3 in his previous 3. Before that, 0, that donut against the Leafs. Over at William Hill Caesars, he's minus 130 for 2.5 shots. So, guys, not a lot of games here. Cirelli, 1.5, Hyman 2.5, Kane at 3.5, and Johnny Gaudreau at 2.5. I have no problem going to Lindholm. I think the stack of the night would be the Flames, right, against this Chicago team. You look for some of the offense there, and then maybe you could pluck some value in Edmonton. But I don't think we'll see a lot of goals in those first 2 games. I think a lot of the offense from Calgary here tonight, and I really do like Markstrom if you can find a way to get to him or to Vasilevsky as well. One final question here, Pete, before we get you out of here. It was just the Oilers goaltending situation. Somebody had asked what to do about Koskinen and Skinner. Smith's now on long-term IR, so I don't know if we'll see him back for a bit. But if you were a Koskinen owner, would you maybe pick up Skinner and just roll the duo, the Edmonton duo? I mean, this is one of the better teams in the league. I think that'd be the strategy to take for me.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different strategies. A lot of people have Smith stashed on IR or IR plus. If you have him there and you could pick up Skinner as the 3rd or 4th goalie, I'm not afraid to roll 4 or even 5 goalies in my leagues. One of my deep leagues, I have 5 goalies right now. That was the one where I picked up. So I have Vasilevsky as a keeper. I have the Panthers duo. So I was pretty good for a while, but I wanted to pick up Quick as a 4th. And then Ottinger was out there, so I picked up Ottinger as a 5th. So
stealing all the goalies from everyone. I love it.
Yeah. So for sure. And then, if Ottinger wasn't there, I would have picked up Skinner for some exposure and some spot starts for the Oilers, who are really one of the 5 safest teams in fantasy. I've been critical of that team in years past, and it's kind of shown why I've been critical, how they've performed in the playoffs with some of the flaws on the roster. But this is a little bit different this year. Top 6, strong as ever. Goalies are in good hands on a nightly basis. Even if Skinner allows 3 or 4 goals on a given night, he's going to get you the win more times than not. How many other teams out there could you really say that about? So, and then even like Nurse goes down for 2 to 3 weeks. Bouchard's been a beast. They have Tyson Barrie on their third pair. And then on their second pair, they have Philip Broberg, who was a top 10 pick from 2 years ago, a defenseman. So, and he had an assist in his debut. So that's a guy to keep an eye on for DFS and props and things like that, because he's gotten inserted into the lineup for Edmonton, and he's a quality prospect that's going to cover some categories for you, and he's going to be playing in a significant role. That's the thing about Barrie. Like, Barrie can score points, but I feel like they're going to lean more on the Bouchards and the Brobergs, the younger guys that have a better two-way track record in their young careers.
Bouchard's fantastic, right? He's starting, a former first-round pick, I think 2018. I believe he was 10th overall. He looks really good. I think the Oilers have a good one there. Pete, really appreciate your time. I think we got to all the questions. There were some inbox questions, some DMs, and people they don't want to see their league mates asking questions and getting advice from us. So I respect that. I respect that kind of game. There was one, can't decide between Cirelli and Granlund. I would ride with Granlund there. There's something going on with him and Matt Duchene. It's a nice 1-2 punch. It was Ryan G that asked us that question. I think I'd ride this out with Granlund. As much as Cirelli is getting that ice time, he's not playing with those studs. We talked about that earlier, but Granlund and Duchene, man. Duchene, I've been really impressed with him. He kind of seems like he's kind of turned back the clock. Pete, or Eric Young says, well, he lives in Nashville. He's like, man, everyone's been so hard on Matt Duchene. Like, they've been ripping him nonstop in Nashville. And usually they're not too hard on their players. Like, it's a good hockey market. The fan base is great. I've been to a game there a couple times. It's electric, the atmosphere. But Duchene is probably hearing that outside noise, and he's really stepped up his game. Plus 188, guys. I know I'm seeing some comments. Hard to pay. Flames minus 244, minus 240. Put Oilers and Calgary into a parlay. You get that at plus 188 over at FanDuel. Pete, appreciate your time, man. You want to plug the podcast? Where can people check you out? Where can people listen? By all means, share.
Sure, yeah. So whether you're doing props or DFS, definitely check out nhl.com/fantasy. We do like DFS picks. It's the same article every day. We overwrite it, so you could always bookmark that and check out there's always some more under the radar guys in that story. We got our rankings on nhl.com/fantasy as well, 7 days a week. And then we got our podcast, NHL Fantasy on Ice, Mondays and Thursdays. Of course, we see Chris every once in a while. We'll have to get you back on soon to catch up on everything after Thanksgiving for sure. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Hit us up at NHL Fantasy on Twitter and Instagram. We take a ton of fan questions this year. Fan questions, right, Chris? They steer the ship sometimes. It's pretty amazing what they can do for driving our content. But it's been fun to incorporate more mailbag stuff this year. And so definitely hit us up any day of the week, and we'll get your questions answered.
Yeah, you're right. If it wasn't for the fans, we probably wouldn't be able to talk hockey. And so we appreciate you guys as well. That's right. NHL Fantasy on Twitter. Instagram is a great follow as well. If you have Instagram, you guys are always doing some fun polls and, having some fantasy advice on there as well. At NHL Jensen, myself at Chris Meaney, at the Eric Young. Again, subscribe, rate, review to this show. Show us. We'll put you into a draw. We'll be giving away betting packages later on this week. We won't be here on Thursday, American Thanksgiving. So everybody, hopefully you have a great Thanksgiving with your families, and we will be here, I believe, on Friday. Massive 14 games, I think, tomorrow, and like another 14 or 15 on Friday as well. Pete, I appreciate you. Thanks so much, dude. Take care. We'll chat soon. Thanks for everybody hanging out, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.